All right. Hello, everybody. This is Gynarchic Awakening. I've noticed that some Gynarchists end up marrying vanilla women or vanilla guys or whatever, and so they don't always end up with the partner that they want to. In light of that, I've decided to make this video. This is just an advice video for everybody on how, and I know the title is rude as hell, so, please don't take offense to it. I'm just trying to help. If you've watched my channel, you know how I feel about men. So this is a title called How to Raise Your Son Not to Be a Complete Piece of Money symbol HIT. All right, so the number one thing you can do to ensure that to give your son the greatest chance of not growing up to be a complete piece of shit is, first thing you do, homeschool your child. Yes, have a plan for your child. Homeschool them. Do not fucking allow them to go through an education system that is polluted with toxic young males who are getting access to pornography and other material that is far beyond their years, that they're not men yet. They don't know how to process a lot of these emotions. This material degrades them, and as a result, it degrades other men. And I don't. That's just a terrible idea. You should try to delay your son interacting with people, because some people will try to argue the opposite. Well, but they need to know how to interact with people. That's the bullshit excuse they use to get their foot in the door, to fuck with your kid. Don't buy that bullshit. Keep your son as isolated as possible from the boys and men in society, because it doesn't take long before they get a hold of one, and then they pump them full of hate, pump them full of bullshit, and the next thing you know, your kid is a shadow of who they used to be. People always wonder what happened to that nice kid I knew. Some people think that's just, the person magically growing. No, it's not. It's your son being around other males, either imitating their behaviors or going further than those males ever would, just for sheer inspiration. You have no idea what kind of person your son is until you see how they handle what they're being exposed to around them. Okay? So that's my first bit of advice. Keep them the fuck away from it. Don't let them near it. It's not worth it. It's literally not worth it. I am telling you. If I had an adopted son from a young enough age, first thing I'm doing is keeping them the fuck away from these school systems. The things these boys do, the things that they say, that's your first gift you can give to your son. Second gift you can give to your son, and I mean it, no technological access of any kind. That means no phones, no computers, and no video games. And it's really common sense, because when they have phones, they end up either phones or computers. They get online, they find their way into these hate groups, these really, really vicious hate groups that are on like another level. They're always playing the victim, getting other people to buy into their bullshit. And then when they finally have them hook, line, and sinker, that's when the agenda really begins, where the nice kid you knew, the nice boy, he's gone. He ain't coming back. He's going to be radically transformed and conditioned to hate you and other people. And there's nothing you can do about it until he finds his way out of the rabbit hole, if he ever finds his way out. So that's the second thing you could do in that case. And also, I did forget to address why video games. What's the problem there? Aside from the fact that it's just a huge waste of time, this video game nonsense that eventually you're going to grow out of anyways. The reason why you need to keep your son away from these video games is really the online content. There are so many men and young boys who act so toxic that there are literally you can find probably catalogs of videos on YouTube, playlists of people just going absolutely crazy with each other. Cussing each other out until they're out of breath, until their blood pressure is like maxed out. It's incredibly unhealthy. And if your son is in the online gaming world, he is going to pick up all of those bad habits, all that nasty language, all the mistreatment, the abusive behaviors, he's going to pick it up from the other male gamers. So the best thing you can do in this situation is don't even do it. Don't have games in your fucking home. Because if you do, eventually the online gaming thing is going to become a thing. It builds up to it. So if you buy him these video games, sooner or later he's going to be like, well, hey, I've heard about online gaming. Because sooner or later your kid is going to go to a school because the government will require your child to go to a school. And when your child does go to a school, at that point, some of it is out of your hands. The fourth thing that you can do, now again, this is just the bare minimum you can do. It doesn't guarantee anything. But the fourth thing you can do is limit your boys' interactions with other boys. By that, I mean no football team, no basketball team, none of that bullshit. When your son is done with school, your son needs to come straight home. In other words, if you have to drive and pick up your son to do it, do it. And say, look, I'm not gonna give you the money to do this stuff. I'm not going to support these bullshit programs because guess what? Where do you think they're learning this shit? It's the other males. It's the ones who already, it's their nature or they picked it up from somebody. And so think of it like a disease. If you want to contain the spread of a disease, you have to limit any kind of interaction you can with the disease. Now, in this case, the disease is extreme, violent, deadly misogyny. So, and what I mean by that is if there's enough of this shit that's pumped into a kid, you could have him beating on his wife, his girlfriend, all sorts of other fucked up shit. You don't need that in your life. No one fucking needs this. So limit his interactions as much as you can. In other words, it's not just the school stuff, it's the home stuff too, meaning you go to your classrooms, you come home. And when you come home, no males, no males coming in the home whatsoever. No males, period. And if you're visiting anybody, he needs to have your consent to visit somebody else. And it should never include a young male. And all this can sound extreme until you realize you're dealing with some pretty dangerous elements here. Because this stuff does get out of hand. This stuff will go well beyond what you think it will. And at some point, again, it's not just the fact that there's all this stuff. It's that a lot of these people get so caught up in these movements that they don't self-develop anymore. Like they're so consumed by bullshit that they've stopped living their lives. They've stopped getting ahead in higher education. They've stopped trying to pursue a higher job. These people are just on some crap. You can't, I don't know how else to put this, but it's really hard to self-motivate when you don't have a reason to. You have to have a reason. And it can't be rooted solely in hating somebody else or being angry about something. It has to be beyond that. You need love of some kind. But the problem, of course, is that when you enter these groups, there's no love involved. It's just hate. So they can try to play it off and say it ain't what it is, but it is what it is. You want to know how? If the males aren't doing exactly what they want them to do, they start calling them names and degrading them. Proving, of course, that they don't actually care about all men. They just care about the men that do what they want them to do. Which is, by the way, a staple in an abusive person's, it's a staple in the abusive diet. It's how they treat their victims. Not going with the program? Well, it's time to regularly insult you and ostracize you and make you feel like you don't belong. Not all of them are going to do that, but some of them eventually will get around to doing it because they feel like if they can actually use that kind of tactic and behavior, if they engage in these tactics or behaviors, it'll get them what they want. And sometimes it works. So these are just some of the basic things you can do. Some of the more advanced steps, which will, I think, work a little more effectively, is make sure that your kid is always busy with something at home, like on some kind of self-development project of some kind. I can kind of go into detail about that if you want to know, but it's essentially like working on drawing or painting or some kind of complex project. Keeping your son's mind busy and not focusing on all this nonsense. Again, your kid will thank you later because he will grow up to not be a loser. Because a lot of these men that I'm talking about, they're losers. There's just no other way around it. And what I mean by that is they've literally given up in life and they've given in to hate. That's literally, to me, that's one of my primary definitions of a loser, which is they had something bad happen to them, or they went through a bad experience, and so they've decided to poison the rest of the population with what they went through, with their hate, with their problems, with their cynicism and their suspicion. You don't need to do that. You don't have to do that in your personal life if you don't want to. And you definitely don't have to have your kid getting on those, and especially since children, most of them are not going to be able to move out of their parents anyways, you have all the more reason to regulate their access past, because if you're basically, if you're staying in my home, no, I'm not, I'm not going to, I would, if I were a Gynarchist parent, say, look, I want you focusing on stuff that's going to help you get a job. I want you focusing on stuff that's going to get you money, get you a life going. All this other extraneous nonsense, this doesn't actually help you, right? All this stuff about, oh no, they're going to take 50% of my, okay. Well, let's put it this way. Putting all that aside for a moment, do you want your child to be obsessed about what could go wrong in their personal life if they mistreat somebody or do something fucking stupid? Or marrying the wrong person? Or do you want them to just focus on their self-development? What is the more positive thing to do here? Focus on helping to build them up, or keeping them focused on the fear of all of their hard work being rendered pointless or useless? This is actually a really insidious psychological assault on young men's minds. Because when young men are just in the process of developing and then they're being pumped fear into and said, your work, it's all going to be for nothing. You're going to be robbed. Pump all the fear. I mean, first of all, it's not that logical because most men are not going to be in the 1%. So it doesn't really apply to the average male. If you're poor, 25 to 35,000 a year. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she's not marrying you for your money, dude. But even if she was, half of what? It's a lot easier to make up money when you have less of it than when you're in the upper echelon of the middle class or you're wealthy. But anyways, it's not positive. It's not going to help. Also, if people really, it just feels like it's insulting to the intelligence of the other person. Like, do you really think that people don't know about divorce? That they don't know how to read documents? That they can't do their own research? That they need to be told by you about something that they could find out in 5 to 10 minutes? They don't need you. But of course, the hate groups need you to think that you need them. They need it. Why? Because views, money, attention. They need to feel important. They need to feel valued. And the reason, of course, is because deep down, they have no internal value. They're empty, hollow inside. They've got nothing. So you can do that. Another thing that would really help is actually if you introduced a little bit more gynocentrism into your home. Meaning it's not just enough for a son to be busy with a project, because people get bored. So have it to where you have a young daughter who needs things to be taken care of. And basically you just tell the son, if your sister or whoever needs something, in other words, needs you to cook or clean or do different things go ahead and do it. Or if you do this stuff, you can get an allowance or whatever. However you want to go about encouraging those gynocentric behaviors, because the more focused the male is on pleasing and serving the women and girls in their life, I promise you that they're going to be bred of a finer stock than the individuals who have absolutely no idea what's going on in women's minds, has no idea what their struggles or pains are. Those men, again, they're a lost cause. And sometimes it's not their fault, but at some point you got to move on from the sympathy and empathy stage or the compassion stage, all of these stages, and go towards, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that this kid stays away from a male gang, stays out of trouble? And the more gynocentric the male is, the more they're focused on serving the women and the girls in their personal life, generally speaking, the less time they have to do stupid fuckery.